Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're talking about Scenes from a Marriage, the series finale, and that was a lot. Okay, so I'm going to start the conversation. You guys can end the conversation, and I am very interested to see your reactions. I feel like it was either you loved it or you're like, what a damn waste of time. So this episode takes place 4 years after the first episode. And I guess the lesson we're supposed to take from this is that first loves are difficult to get over and the trauma of divorce. So if anyone's been divorced, please shed a light. Like, how long did it take you to get over this person that you separated from? And there's a scene between Mira and Jonathan, and Mira basically says, you know what, in my own deranged way, I'll always love you. And Jonathan, you know, in your own complicated way, you'll always love me. And what I got out of that is that both of these people have nothing to lose or nothing they feel of, like they don't really care. And so they had this kind of like, it is what it is attitude. And I would be lying if I said I was rooting for Jonathan, but they wrote him into the ground. I mean, I understand, like, but they did a number on him. The other possible lesson you could have gotten from this episode is, if you remember episode 1, during that interview, Jonathan says that it's first world problems that kind of end relationships nowadays. Like, people kind of want more than what they can have. And looking at Jonathan and Mira, materialistically, they're better off, right? Especially Jonathan. You know, he's doing TED Talks, he looks great, he seems to be very, you know, his career it seems like it's taken off. And yet, although these two as individuals are thriving, they are so lonely, right? They are so lonely. And I'm not sure if this was meant to be like a commentary on that. Like, what is the balance between, you know, your individual happiness and kind of the bigger picture, right? And that is something to think about. So to begin, we will analyze the weather and time of day, just to give us some breathing room. So every time we see Mira and Jonathan, they're always in the house. So this is the first time we're seeing them outside of the house. And right at the start of the episode, you get a glimpse of Mira and Jonathan. And although they are apart, they're clearly still very much connected. And each of these episodes takes place in the winter time. And over these 4 years, it's always the winter. And winter, of course, is the death of summer. And symbolically, it is a time of grieving and mourning. And of course, that's how they start the episode, with Jonathan mourning his father. And Jonathan, at this funeral, he had no tears. And as we know, he had a very poor relationship with his father. It seems like he was a little bit afraid of him, or he felt like he couldn't really communicate with him effectively. And this conversation that he has with his mother was really telling, because you get a contrast in terms of how different, or how, you know, how ideas on marriage have really just totally changed, right? So Jonathan basically decides he's going to project all his feelings onto his mother, right? And he kind of is trying to get her to admit that she is somewhat happy that their father has died, right? And Jonathan's mother and father, they have been married for 53 years. So this is a very long time. And Jonathan's mother, she was not having it, right? She's looking at her son like, excuse me, what? You don't know nothing, boo-boo. Like, who the hell are you talking about? And his mother basically tells him quite clearly, like, listen, I've been married for this long. We had 5 children. You know, we clearly communicated. And the issue here is marriage, right? And his mother has a very traditional view of marriage. She kind of gave her whole life to her family. And this is what marriage was about, right? Like, it's about a sense of duty and honor beyond yourself. And Jonathan, I found him to be very preachy and very like moralistic. And at first I was like, I see your point. But as the episode goes on, you're like, sir, you have no point. And so he's talking about attraction and happiness. And that's another conversation that comes up, right? Is marriage about happiness? And his mother and himself, they're on two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? On one end, you have that traditional view of marriage where you come together for the community. It's something outside of yourself. And now it's almost the opposite extreme, right? And this is incredibly unhealthy. This idea that if I'm happy, my kid will be happy. This idea that there's a one, or that I deserve love. Like, you don't deserve anything, Jonathan. And this is a very kind of juvenile view of relationships. And the way that Jonathan was kind of describing things kind of foreshadowed the situation ahead, because it's clear that a lot of his mother's frustration was from the fact that she knew that he was still seeing Mira. Like, that's kind of the sense you get, especially looking back. Because at one point she says, you know what? Get divorced, but don't lie to yourselves. Like, don't lie. And I didn't know what she meant by that, but as the episode goes on, you realize, oh, that's what she meant. And so before we talk about Mira and Jonathan, we talk about Mira's day. So Mira is dressed very casually. She survived since the last episode. She found a new consulting job. And we see Poli. And Poli is hot. And I don't know what the purpose of showing him to us was. Like, does the partner that does it make a difference if he's hot? Like, does that kind of does that make us more understanding? So I thought it was interesting that they decided to show us what he looked like, knowing that's what we were most interested in. And he clearly still has feelings for her, and he was trying to basically get her to accept this job. And at first I was kind of with Mira. She's like, I have to go take care of my kid. I'm happy where I am. I can't, these days are passing by. And there seems to be like an undertone of jealousy and toxicity in this relationship, because this Poli guy basically was like, I don't believe you. Who are you seeing? This kind of obsession with who she's seeing. And she seems to be enjoying herself, right? She seems to be getting kind of a kick out of the fact that he can't really identify what she's doing outside of when they're hanging out. And so this conversation with Poli was really interesting, because he has the audacity to say, listen, I wasted my time with someone who doesn't know what it's like to be in a relationship. And I was like, you're a homewrecker. Like, what do you mean? It seems like people want what they can't have. And that's probably what drew them together. And so after this conversation, another thing really struck out at me was the fact that she now drives this vintage Benz. Like, this car reminded me, it's kind of like a dream car if you're trying to relive your youth. So that's kind of the vibe I got from Mira, that she was trying to she was just living her best life day to day. She wasn't trying to fight it anymore. And she's also in a rush to go somewhere. So initially I thought she was going to go see her kid, but that was not the case. And so we get to the beginning of the end, right? So you see that it's nighttime, and it's appropriate that it's nighttime because it's clear that these two were trying to hide their dirty little secret. And so Mira picks up Jonathan at the airport, and she's prettying herself up as per usual, right? So it's clear that she cares what he thinks. And not only that, when he got into the car, he looked good too, right? And their daughter so at first I thought, okay, maybe they're gonna go see their daughter, but they're at a babysitter. And it still wasn't clear why they were hanging out. I'm like, maybe they're working on something, maybe, but they were very friendly and chatty and, flirty. And we come to find out that they've been hanging out for a long time. It's suggested that they were hanging out at hotels, kind of sneaking around like small children, in the night. So they went from kind of hating each other to kind of having an affair, And so Jonathan says, hey, I have a surprise for you. And it turns out, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the anniversary of when they decided to get married. Because I guess the way they got married, he had a severe asthma attack. She was the one who took care of him. And that night they decided to get married because the people at the hospital assumed that they were already together. And so maybe that's why these episodes take place in the winter time also. Like, there's some sort of other meaning to it. And so he's like, I have a surprise for you, pull over. And he takes her to their old house. And he kind of notes a few things that were quite alarming. First, he's been obsessed with the house. He's been driving past it on his way to work every day. And if you remember from the last episode, he was looking back on the house, but he looked very sad. He kind of put his seatbelt on, but he kept looking back, like he didn't want to let the house go. And it turns out the owners of the house put it up on Airbnb. So when they're gone, they get extra money and people can stay there. And it turns out the house was available for that night. and he thought it would be cool if they stayed there. And that was so creepy. So they go into the house, and the contrast between the two was really interesting because she was like, clearly she never wanted to enter that house again. Her arms are crossed. She seems very kind of annoyed. He walks in like he stayed in this house before. Like, it's clear that he kind of Airbnb'd before. Like, he was too comfortable. He walked in and he was kind of showing her around as if he already knew what the house looked like. And so they're walking around and they're talking, and just looking at the house, it feels warmer. You know, it feels like a home, you know, not just a house. You know, there's a kid's bedroom. It just feels like the people in that house live in that house, you know? And so they have this conversation over takeout. I thought it was appropriate that they were eating like pizza because everything about this is instant gratification, right? Like, you have takeout because you're hungry and you need something to satisfy that hunger, but later you feel bloated and tired. And that's pretty much where these two are headed. So we find out a lot about Mira and Jonathan in this conversation. First, Mira. Turns out she had a very toxic relationship with her mother. And hearing about her past, you do kind of sympathize with her. You know, like, I wish we had this information before, because you're like, ugh. Which maybe explains why she was so quick to leave the house. Her mother was divorced many times, and not only that, she told her daughter, listen, this is a great guy, but you're not genetically cut out for marriage. And children learn by seeing, right? So you have to demonstrate the behavior, and you also have to communicate the behavior to them, right? So this mother had the audacity to show her that marriages don't work out in this family, and communicated to her that this isn't going to work out for you. So obviously a child hearing this, you know, you try your best to do the opposite, right? It just becomes like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. And you end up kind of manifesting your own demise, right? And that's kind of what happened to Mira, to the point where she's done. Like, the vibe, the energy, the way she's communicating, she will never get married again because she doesn't want to try, right? Like, there's no attempt to even try again because she feels that everything her mother told her came true. And our parents have a huge effect on us. I think Mira I don't know if she's seen a therapist since, but, you know, she has these deep-seated beliefs that have only gotten deeper since the last episode. And contrasting Mira to Jonathan, Jonathan has a poor relationship with his father. His whole life seems to be similar to Mira's in that he modeled himself in being the opposite of this man. So he was a bad guy, so I'm going to be a good guy, and I'm going to be seen as a good guy, and I'm going to be seen as very easy to talk to and communicate with. And he just ended up being the polar opposite. And so Jonathan, he is not only hitting rock bottom, but he doesn't care. Like, he's trying to pretend like he doesn't care. And the biggest revelation is that he's married with a kid. So from the last episode, he was thinking about this co-parenting thing, and that would have been healthier than what he's doing now. So Jonathan is just going through the motions. At least Mira stopped going through the motions. So Jonathan has a child. The way he describes the marriage process, like, he got married in exchange for the kid was more important to him than the family, right? His priority wasn't to start a family. It was to have a child. And that is quite dangerous. And the other thing that was quite disturbing is the fact that not only is he sleeping with Mira, he's had other affairs since then. And not only has he had other affairs, he doesn't seem to be very good at hiding these affairs. And not only that, he's pretty much anticipating the day when his wife finds out, and he doesn't really care if the marriage ends. And it seems like he thinks he's the prize. So in his relationship to Mira, she was the prize. There's always one spouse that is, like, you feel like you're lucky to have that person. And so for Jonathan, he felt like he was lucky to have Mira. You know, like, his nightmare was losing her. And with his new wife, he doesn't have that fear because he doesn't love her as much, right? So he feels like, I have nothing to lose. And Jonathan's glowed up. It seems like he's doing TED Talks. It seems like he's doing very well for himself. So he feels like his wife might be lucky to have him. Like, that's kind of the energy that he's giving. And the way he says it, it's like, I love her differently. And I thought it was really interesting because here was a guy blabbing about compatibility, saying, you know what, maybe I need to find somebody similar. So the same way he kind of, went opposite to his father, he kind of went opposite to Mira, right? He found somebody in the same tradition, knew the same references, same everything. And turns out they couldn't be like further apart, right? So at that point you have to wonder, is it about compatibility, Jonathan? Or maybe you just don't know what you want. I was like, don't blame it on sex. Because he was trying to say, the sex isn't great or it's not happening. And I'm like, it wasn't happening in this marriage either. Like, what? Jonathan, what do you want? And so they have these conversations and they make themselves right at home. The first sex scene they have is super awkward, right? Mira's wearing lingerie. And I find it interesting that they literally made themselves at home, right? So he has an asthma attack. We haven't seen him have asthma. It's probably a sign of his guilt. And she has the audacity to go into this woman's closet, grab a jacket. Like, they are really just chilling out. They're grabbing their wine. They're relaxing. In that first sex scene, I think it felt uncomfortable because they both know, like, it's like they're playing house, like quite literally playing house, but it's not real. And I think the best sort of contrast to this is when Mira finds the key to this other room. So there's a room in the house that says, please do not enter, and this is the attic. And they go up to the attic, and this was really sad because this attic pretty much represents their potential, right? So this attic, before they got the abortion, they decided they wanted to renovate the attic. And Mira said, I have plans for it, I'll fix it, I'll do all of this. And of course that never happened, right? So this was kind of causing some tension between Mira and Jonathan. So nobody ever renovated this damn attic, but this family did. And the attic was wonderful, right? Like, you had Polaroid pictures, you had lights. It felt like people were actually living there and enjoying themselves. And so this is everything they could have had, right? And in that moment you wonder, like, did you guys really do everything you could to save this marriage? Because it takes two to tango. So they have sex again in this attic. And this was a lot more intimate. And they were having sex like they were having sex for the first time ever, Like, there was this closeness. And I wonder if it's because, like, they felt more at home, Like, they were trying to imagine a life that they clearly aren't going to live anytime soon. And then we get more into Jonathan's head. So Jonathan starts talking about these nightmares that he was having. And this one nightmare in particular, like, you guys let me know what you made of this nightmare. He had a nightmare that they were in a car crash and they had to get out of the car and kind of run to safety. And for whatever reason, he was unable to follow Mira and their daughter because his hands turned into stubs and he was just kind of paralyzed and there was nothing he could do about it. And he kind of made the comment saying when he was a child, he would communicate to his mother that I was having boring dreams. Boring means scary, and his mother never picked up on it, right? So everybody in his house, Jonathan basically just couldn't talk to anybody, So he's been this person kind of screaming out for help, but nobody really wants to listen. And this dream about the car crash and about trying to communicate with his mother, but she kind of had earmuffs on and she didn't want to listen. What I got out of that is that Jonathan is someone who desperately wants to maintain the family bond that him and Mira and their daughter have. But everything he's doing is just kind of bringing him further and further, not just away from himself, but potentially his child, right? Because at the end, this is not going to work out, and that's going to leave him where, right? And so they're having this conversation, and she's just like hugging him, and I love you, I got you, and he's like, I don't know if I've ever been loved or if anyone will ever love me. And I was thinking about his father's funeral. And it's quite scary because Jonathan is someone who kind of viewed his father as someone incapable of love. And now he's trying to almost trick himself into thinking he's the same guy. And so ultimately, I don't know where this is going, but I suspect, Jonathan, they really wrote him into the ground. You guys have to help me out because I was left speechless. And the ending was quite interesting because you see that Mira is consoling him and she kind of reads out a poem like somewhere in the world without any fanfare. Like, what I got out of this sort of last line is you have two people here that, you couldn't imagine being together ever again. And yet here they are playing house, and it seems like everything that they're doing now will have very, traumatic consequences for everyone involved, right? Especially Jonathan, because he's just kind of waiting for his life to blow up, whereas Mira is like, I give up. So, I don't know, like, you guys let me know what you think. I thought it was that finale kind of went for the jugular. You got the sense that both of them, although materialistically, in terms of career, in terms of everything that they have, they're better off. But like inside, they're more broken than ever, right? And what does that say about the relationship between people nowadays, right? Like, we're so focused on ourselves and finding individual happiness that, we forget that at the end of the day, we're kind of social animals and we're not really meant to walk this life alone. And Jonathan is the ultimate example of that, right? Like, here he is, he has a second chance at a family, and he couldn't feel more alone, right? And so I'm wondering, where is his therapist? Where are the people that... I'm still processing my feelings with Jonathan. Again, I wasn't rooting for him that much. Like, I was kind of on and off with him. But man, he didn't deserve that. Like, that was rough. You guys let me know what you think, and until next time.